our emotion when meetings are hard. But we're going to get started by watching this short video. Now, during this short video, this video is going to be longer than what we show. We're just going to look at the first couple of minutes. And to be honest, this is an over dramatized, very hard to watch meeting. The end of it is a good version, but we're not going to watch that part. We're going to watch just the beginning of this. And in the chat as we watch, I want you to put yourself in the shoes of the other people at this meeting and in the parents. And I want you to think about how you feel. And I want to see your emojis as we're watching for if that was you, if you were in these spaces, how would you feel? Okay. So we're gonna hit play, but I'm gonna mute myself so you can't hear me breathe.
I'm sure everybody will be here soon, Mr. Jones. They said they'd be here at 2:30, and I know it's a little bit past 2:30, but they said they'd be here.
So, how long are we gonna wait?
Not very long. Hopefully you can wait. Oh, good. Here come the general ed teachers now.
He's gonna win.
Okay, hi, you guys.
Hey, how are you?
Good. Thank goodness you're here. We're missing the administrator and the interpreter. Let me find out where they are. Okay, just hang on. Yes, I was just wondering if Ms. Owens is coming to the IEP meeting. Also, the interpreter, what's with that? Okay, all right, thanks. Well, the interpreter's job didn't get picked up by the sub-finder, so we don't have anybody. And the administrator is in a meeting right now. She said to go ahead, though, and she'll try to make it before the end of the meeting. Greg, since you speak Spanish, could you interpret for us, since we don't have anybody else?
Sure. Yo hablo español poquito. Should we go over the parent rights with them first?
I forgot the parent rights. Do you have them? Do you have them in Spanish?
Let me look.
Oh, good, okay.
Protecciones en español y inglés. Sin es normal, no, sin es normal, 90 a 110 es normal area, 80 a 90 es normal baja poquito, 70 a 80 es internal deficiente, 70 a 0 es deficiente. Examinaciones de inteligencias, su niñas habilidades es normal.
So, Ms. Gerke, will you give your report now on how he's doing in your class?
Oh, I didn't know I had to bring anything.
Do you have some student work handy?
No, I don't have anything.
Can you
I guess I could just
tell
talk
them-
about.
Yeah.
Just tell them how they're doing in reading.
Okay, we'll start with reading. So right now, your child should be able to read about 92 words per minute, but he's only able to read 30.
Lectura 90.
Hi everyone, I apologize for being late. Go ahead, continue.
This isn't the PLC meeting, is it?
No,
It's an IEP meeting.
What room is the PLC meeting in?
That's in building 14.
I think it's 16. 16.
But my principal says,
Try 14, then go to 16. If it's not at 16, go to 15, then come back here.
okay, thanks, sorry for the interruption.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, Greg's told you to make this.
So, Mr. and Mrs. Jones, do you have any questions about what we discussed today?
Todas preguntas?
Okay, well, I'll have you sign the IEP,
Who said for me, Aki?
and we'll send a copy home tomorrow. Well, thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Bye.
Did they seem upset?
Yeah.
Has it always been that hostile?
I was telling her, I don't think that they were prepared for this
I don't
meeting.
think she understood
I don't,
everything. that was
well,
going
that's
on.
part of the problem.
Maybe she didn't like hearing what you said about her.
That could be true.
Yeah.
I'm sure they did.
I have to unmute, I guess, for you guys to hear me. In one word, how would you feel if you were a parent at that meeting? Frustrated? Disrespected? Angry? Is this important to anyone but me? Forgotten? I think there's a lot of emotions to unpack here, right? I think there are several things that went very wrong. There was no interpreter. People were not prepared. Nobody brought data. There were people late walking into meetings. The room was not closed off. There were a lot of things that went wrong. And the reality is most of us are going to attend meetings. We might have one of these things happen. That's why it's an over dramatization where everything that could possibly go wrong went wrong, right? And I hope that none of you guys ever have meetings that go this poorly. But I think what is important also is one of the biggest problems I actually have with this is in that second after the parents walk out of the room, the team continued to talk about them as though they weren't the one, they were the ones unprepared. And I think that we should all take a breath before we do that. Because what if somebody had walked back into that room because they forgot their phone or they forgot a pin? Then all of those angry emotions, they're just worse, right? Because now I hear that you're talking about me afterwards. If this was you in this meeting, what is one thing that you would have done? If you were the parent in this meeting, what is something that you would have done? I think for me, at the very beginning, when they did not have an interpreter, that could have been a good time to say, hey, it sounds like we're not ready to have this meeting today. Let's reschedule. There were a couple other times where people said they were not prepared, where we could have said, I think it might be time for us to reschedule. It seems like we're not prepared. Let's schedule another day and time where we can come back to this table and be prepared and work together as a cohesive team. Because the reality is that when we're working with IEP teams, right, we are with a group of people and we are trying to coordinate, collaborate, and communicate with a variety of people. We want everybody to be on the same page because we're all there to work for the benefit and betterment of our kids, right? And so for us to do that, everybody that is present needs to be of one accord. I totally agree. We need to reschedule. We don't have all of our pieces in play. We are not prepared to have this meeting today. But it's very important when stuff like this happens that as parents or as educators, that we are able to convey ourselves without necessarily letting our emotions interfere. Because no matter which side of the table, sometimes people's passion can be misunderstood and miscommunicated, right? I might be really passionate about my kiddo, and that could cause me to miscommunicate, right? Because sometimes emotions can cloud our message. I'll give you a good example with Andrea. She doesn't know I'm going to share this, so hopefully as well. One of the first times I met Andrea, we were at a staff meeting and she was getting over a cold, and I have a medically fragile kiddo. And in my thinking about my medically fragile kiddo, you guys, I like scooted away from her. And outwardly, I realized that that was probably really, really rude. But my emotions about my kiddo superseded my ability to think about how I maybe was making other people feel, right? And so sometimes as people, we and our emotions can be clouds for how we're acting, right? Because I could have really hurt her feelings. And even, it's been a year and I still feel bad about that. So I want to, as we're thinking about how we communicate in our meetings, it is so important that we try our best to communicate effectively. And sometimes that can be really hard, right? Because you're going to be in meetings where stuff is tense, where you maybe don't agree with everything that has happened. So we want to talk about first, how are we going to manage our strong emotions? So obviously we want you to practice self-care. These things are hard. Sometimes you're going to hear things in these meetings that are hard. So maybe that is before I go to this meeting, I'm going to get a cup of coffee. Maybe before or after I leave this meeting, I'm going to go get a fancy dessert. There's a place here that does maple bacon creme brulee. Plan ahead, think about what you're going to need. Understand your feelings. When I say understand your feelings, write them out. Go ahead, think about your concern statement. Write it out so that you can read it. If there are tense conversations that you need to have, go ahead and jot down some of the things you want to say, because that gives you a chance to play with the wording and you can think about it before you say it. One of the biggest downfalls to some of our instant communication methods today is, how often do you send a message without really thinking about what it says when you're angry? I'm definitely guilty of that. I'm guilty of sending a text message or a personal email before I have fully thought through all of my feelings, right? So sometimes writing it out and then coming back to it later to communicate those thoughts and rewriting it in a way that it says the same thing, but we remove some of those very emotionally charged words, right? Because it can say the same thing and still be respectful and polite and get across the same message. Be self-aware, understand your triggers. These are going to be different for everybody. For example, Andrea's kiddo has different concerns than my kiddo. There are things that people say about my kiddo that I find very triggering, like he's not capable of learning. He's never going to do this. I'm sure that for Andrea, there are different words, different labels, different ideas that are equally as difficult to hear. And when you hear people that are on your team express those ideas, it can be very traumatic, right? Because you want to believe, that we're all here for our best intentions for our kids. And so one way to help navigate that is going to be educate your team, and educate them on your kiddo's disability. You are your child's best advocate. You know your child best. Tell them about your kiddo. Tell them what they can do. Tell them about what you see in your home. And also, when there are triggers, you can say, for example, in an IEP meeting that I went to with my son, I told him, I said, the things you are saying makes it feel like you are not here to partner with me. And for my child to have a successful, free and appropriate public education, we all need to partner together. And after that, we were able to work together to think through some of the things that we're saying and communicating so that we can effectively communicate. Because while I am passionate about my child's education, I don't want my passion to be a barrier to him getting the education he needs because of clashing within the team, right? I want to maintain those good conversations, and part of having good IEP meetings and managing our emotions comes down to good communication and relationship building. Ooh. In the chat, go ahead and drop in one thing you do to manage your emotions when conversations or situations are difficult. I take deep breaths. I used to teach preschool, you guys, and we learned how to do this balloon breathing, and you put your hand on your head, and as you breathe in, and then you make a funny noise as it comes out. And while I don't do the outwards expressions of that, because I don't need anybody else to see me blow my air out like a balloon, What I do is take deep breaths, in and out. Sometimes I count with those. What do you guys do? Rosa takes deep breaths. Andrea's post, you guys can't see it, but she takes deep breaths too. Some people count. I've seen some people, some people click pins. I know it's bothering to other people, but some people do click pins as a way to manage their emotions, because sometimes that fast clicking can be very therapeutic, you guys. In IEP meetings specifically, or in other areas where we're having tense conversations, what about asking for a break? Hey, this conversation was really difficult. I just need a few minutes to calm down. Can we step away? We'll come right back. Sometimes you need a longer break, depending on what the subject is. Hey, I really appreciate what you guys are telling me. I understand, that this is really important information, but I'm going to need a little more time to take it in and come back to the table with some thoughts and concerns prepared. I think that's a great one. Wiggling your toes, pushing on the ground, because grounding yourself, right? Whatever works for you. Our boss found these sensory strips, you guys, and there's just a little piece of tape with like little ridges on it. But I have gotten a couple of those to just put around the house, and nobody pays attention, right? It's a little strip of tape, but like it gives you a chance to feel something else. Obviously what helps you is gonna be different, but knowing what helps you, carrying that in and thinking about how you can use that to help you in the meetings. And again, ahead of time, it is okay to draft your concerns, and have people read it. For example, I wrote a letter to my son's hospital team expressing some negative concerns, and I had several people read it ahead of time because I don't want my emotions to cover the meaning, right? Because sometimes when we're in those spaces, our emotions can be very clouding, and I want to remove the emotions. That being said, I still want to convey them. And I know that's I want the team, and I want medical providers, I want the people I'm interacting with to understand where I'm coming from so that they have the ability to empathize. But I also don't want my passion and my emotions to be so strong that my message is lost. Because we see that happen, right? We see that point where you're as a person, you get so passionate about something that all people hear is your emotions, and they don't hear the reason for how you got there. So some of the things that we want to keep in mind: everybody's participation is important. I may not agree with what person A, B, and C are saying, but they still deserve my respect as they're conveying their opinions and their thoughts. When you're in an IEP meeting specifically, you could ask for, the data that would support the message. You want to value the emotions that other people are bringing, because other people have other experiences and other expertises that they're bringing to the table. So we want to be respectful of that. For example, something as simple as, I understand that you have been a teacher for a really long time, and I know that technique has really worked with other kids. We've tried that for a while with my kid, and it doesn't work, but I really appreciate you bringing that idea to the table. Or even, that could be said the other way, and you could say, hey, I know you're not sure this will work. You have a lot of experience, but could we try it? Trials are a good way to beat in the middle when there are strong yes on one side and a strong no on the other. Could we just try something to see if it works? And if not, why not? What are the reasons, right? We want to have an emotionally safe space. We want to be able to hear people's emotions and their reasons and still be in a safe space. We want to, the next four kind of come down to active listening, right? We want to listen to understand and not to respond. We want to be able, and some of the ways you can do this in practice are, like if Andrea was to tell me something right now, I could paraphrase it. I could summarize. What I hear you saying is XYZ. What I understand you to be saying is XYZ. And one of the things I like about that technique of summarizing, paraphrasing, it also gives you a chance to think it through a little bit more. Another thing you could do is ask clarifying questions. And the reason I say this, sometimes I may not need the answers, but sometimes I need the moment that it will take them to think about and clarify the answers, because that'll give me the space to think, right? It'll give me some more time to process what they're saying and move forward rather than having a very knee-jerk response. And respond with care. Take a moment, take a breath, think about what you're going to say before you say it. Everybody doesn't need that, but some of us are very knee-jerk responders, quick to respond. I grew up in a house with too many siblings, and real quick to say the first thing that comes to my mind, but that's not always the best thing to say. And so taking a moment, taking a deep breath, and reflecting, even just for a second, on what you're going to say and the message that you want to convey. Because everybody else is not going to see your intent, right? I may say something quickly and it may convey a message that was different the intent that I had. So thinking critically about what you're going to say and thinking carefully about how you're going to convey it is important. And we are always happy here at ECAC, if you guys approach us for individual assistance, to brainstorm some phrasing with you guys to make sure that in the meetings that you are able to convey those messages the way that you want. And we're also the same with emails, right? Because we know that one of the best successes that our kiddos have is to have a team that is actively working together cooperatively with good relationships and good collaboration between home and school. So we hope always that IEP teams are going to come to consensus. Sometimes that just doesn't happen, and there is conflict. Conflict creates a lot of emotion. Now, when problems arise, depending on where they are, if problems arise, in the classroom, we're going to talk to that classroom teacher first. If there are problems with service delivery or with special education, we're going to talk to the team before we go up the chain. Can you tell me in the chat, if the team disagrees, who makes the final decision? While you guys are thinking about that, I think that there is a comment. There's a comment that I really like. Obviously, yes, there are some people that use those rubber bands. It's again to give you a different sensation where they pop the rubber bands. I don't like pain, so I wouldn't do that. But I think the idea is the same as clicking the pen or pushing your toes on the floor. It's giving yourself a different sensation to focus on. But I also love the idea of bringing a notepad and doodling, because it can take the focus off and keep you. It can give you a minute to have a second to respond and react. So if the team disagrees, who is going to make that final decision is going to be your LEA rep, your local education agency representative, whoever is serving in that role. When they do introductions, at the beginning, they should tell you who is serving in that role. It's often a principal or assistant principal, though some districts have their own administrators, like EC facilitators who sit in those roles. And they are supposed to make the best decision from the data that is presented when families and teams disagree. That can still be really hard from a parent's perspective. In these cases, we can ask for a trial. We can ask that we see if their way works and have another meeting in 4 to 6 weeks to see how it's going. We can say, hey, I think this meeting, I'd like to revisit this discussion and come back to the table. One of the other things, is we also have our dispute resolution options. Again, at ECAC, we recommend working through the channel. So if you're having trouble, you would go, with your team, you'd go to the district level staff first, but you do have dispute resolution options that include state complaints, facilitation, mediation, and due process. One of the most successful of these is facilitation. We find that oftentimes when conflict arises, and there are high emotions, it's due to communication concerns where people do not feel heard at meetings. Similar to the meeting we just watched, families, often pursue facilitation when they feel that their opinion isn't heard or respected. that they're not a valued member of the team. And a facilitator, a non-biased facilitator comes in, and they facilitate, they lead the meeting and they make sure that everybody gets a chance to express themselves and be heard. Which can be great because it's an outside party. They don't get to make any decisions. They're not really a part of the IEP team, but they're there to make sure that both Andrea and I have a voice in that meeting. And so it's a really good option for some families. Obviously, if you guys have any specific questions about dispute resolution or concerns about your own kiddo, please contact us. We love to help through our individual assistance, to help you guys to navigate these concerns and talk through what is available. So we only have another minute. Does anybody have any questions? Obviously, we hope that everybody has a great year and fabulous teams. But I want to remind everybody that everybody's human. Everybody is going to make mistakes. And I think one of the biggest thing when it comes to emotions that people often underutilize is an apology. It makes people feel much better, even if you don't agree with their position, when there is an apology for something that has occurred. Hey, I am so sorry that you didn't feel heard. I'm going to do it. I'm going to really work on that. I'm sorry that I spoke so strongly. I'm really passionate about the education of my child, and I really want to work with you and partner with you. We often hear from families, that an apology would have made them feel so much better about going into the school year with their team. But also, I think on the other side too, sometimes apologies can solve communication issues, but also working together to determine how you guys can work together, because everybody communicates differently, and communication is so important to having successful meetings of any kind, whether they're IEP or otherwise. So making sure that you're paraphrasing and summarizing is essential. Andrea is going to launch our poll because we are federally funded and they like to know how we are doing. If you guys
actually, Anastasia, could you do that? Because for some reason I don't have the ability. I don't know why.
Sure. I will launch the poll. We like to know how we're doing. And one of the things that I would love is if in that open-ended question, you put more Tool Time Tuesday type topics that you guys would like to hear from, because we take a look at these to think about what topics we're going to plan in the future. Because we want to make sure that your input is heard and valued, and that you have the opportunity to have a say in the things that we share. We're also going to send you guys some good follow-up resources on communicating with your teams.
And I'll add just now that about next week's Tool Time Tuesday, hopefully you'll join us for that. It is the power of good questions, and we'll be joined by our lead parent educator, Doreen Bird. So hopefully you can join us then. We have a lot of great tool times in September to get you back into school. So thank you for joining us today, and hopefully we'll see you at future tool times.
We are excited to see you guys at future tool times. Next week, we're also doing early childhood communication. I'm forgetting the exact title, but I'm excited to be there for it. So we hope to see you guys there. I hope you guys have a great Tuesday. And we'll see you guys next week. Bye.